Mom convicted of her 2-year-old daughter to death will spend the next 15 years to life in prison.
I hate you, coward.
He was murdered when he was 18 years old.
Am I ever going to see my wife and my son, who was 3 months old at the time?
Instead, he inserted his finger inside of her without her consent.
A former police officer received his prison sentence for robbing people he stopped during traffic stops. Police are relied upon for help, but Willie Sims abused that trust. He was sentenced to prison for his actions.
He respected the police. He said, you know, you dragged him out of the car. He wanted to fight you back, but he couldn't. You were a policeman, and you had to go.
The judge didn't hold back, sharply criticizing former police officer Willie Sims for breaking the law. Jonathan Whitlow had recorded Sims robbing him of thousands of dollars during a traffic stop.
I don't care about this man going to jail. I want my money. That's what I want is my paper. This ain't gonna solve nothing.
The former officer stole money, drugs, and guns during several traffic stops in East Cleveland.
Y'all about to send him to prison. He can't pay me making 3 cents an hour. How is he gonna pay me? How are we gonna get all of our belongings back? How are we gonna get anything back? All we gotta do is sit here and live with pain and anger. Y'all gonna pay for a therapist?
That's a good question.
I have to worry about a cop pulling me over and me getting smashed, getting slammed over the head. And these dudes get to do what they do and then go to PC. He about to go to PC, he ain't about to get it in like none of the real gangsters.
Willie Sims had to forfeit his police certification and was fined $40,000. He also had to pay $8,000 in restitution and was sentenced to 2 years in prison. The great-grandson of former Cleveland Mayor Frank Jackson, Donald Jackson Gates, will spend the next 18 years in prison for murder. A judge sentenced Gates for what prosecutors described as retaliation for the murder of his uncle months earlier. Frank Jackson was present in the courtroom to witness his great-grandson's sentencing. The victim's family, seated in the front row behind Jackson, directed their anger at the former mayor's involvement in Gates' life. Although Frank Jackson remained silent during the proceedings, the family of the man Gates was convicted of killing spoke out against him in court. The victim's family requested that their faces not be shown.
Say hate is a terrible word to say, but I hate you. I hate you, coward.
Prosecutors say Jackson Gates fired 17 rounds at Coleman in May 2022, killing him. 911 calls from the area of East 40th and Quincy were dispatched to emergency services.
Send the police, somebody just got killed over here.
Coleman's murder followed the shooting death of Frank Q. Jackson, who was Jackson Gates' uncle. Coleman's uncle, Robert Shepard, was convicted in connection with the killing. Prosecutors alleged that Shepard lured Jackson to the murder scene.
Chrisean and Donald Jackson were still friends and friendly with each other during this time frame. We do believe that this shooting was, in some sense, in retaliation for what Chrisean's family was alleged to have done to Donald Jackson's family.
The murder is just the latest in Jackson Gates' legal troubles. In 2019, he was charged with a drive-by shooting at a Cleveland police officer and later admitted to attempted criminal gang activity in juvenile court. In court, the convicted killer had little to say.
Just apologize to my family. That's all.
For Coleman's family, the sentence wasn't enough. They expressed strong opposition to the plea bargain that allows Jackson Gates a chance of parole after 18 years, arguing that he has already had too many second chances.
You had the keys to the city because of your grandfather, allowing you all to terrorize and torment this city, and still did not accomplish nothing in life. Failure. All you cared about was being a thug, gangster, killer, or whatever you wanted to call yourself.
The judge acknowledged the victim's family's feelings, but emphasized in court that Mayor Jackson did not attempt to interfere in the case. Jason Beckman, 22, was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of his father, South Miami Commissioner Jay Beckman. In court, Beckman gave a brief speech to the judge about his actions and feelings towards his lawyer. Despite a troubled life marked by Asperger's syndrome, the loss of his mother at a young age, and a lack of friends, the judge stated that these factors did not excuse the cold-blooded nature of the crime. As Beckman was sworn in with a sneer on his face, he spoke of what he referred to as his mistake in the murder of his father at their home in April 2009.
I recognize my mistake. My father shouldn't be dead. I wish he was still here. And not because I'm here, but because I loved him, and I really feel like I could have improved my relationship with him just by doing a few things different.
Beckman shot his father dead with a shotgun while his father was showering. Initially, Beckman claimed it was an accident, then argued self-defense, and finally pleaded insanity. In court, Beckman criticized his defense attorney.
The way he represented me, I think he's a clown, honestly. I think he did a horrible job.
Judge Rodney Smith acknowledged that Beckman has a mild form of autism, but noted that he also has a genius IQ. The judge revealed that Beckman had planned his father's murder and even had a hit list of people he wanted dead.
This is your makeup. That's not going to change. This is who you are. You're very vengeful. You have a personality like a ticking time bomb.
No one spoke on Beckman's behalf in court. He has no family support and lost his mother to cancer when he was a child.
Very sad what happened. It's a terrible situation, but the community will be made safe.
Beckman invited the judge to impose the maximum sentence.
If you feel like a life sentence is appropriate, then by all means impose it.
And that's exactly what Judge Smith did, sentencing Beckman to life in prison. Although the judge could have sentenced him to life without the possibility of parole, he chose to impose life with the possibility of parole after a minimum of 25 years. Due to Beckman being a juvenile at the time of the murder, Beckman will be 46 before he's eligible for parole. Andrea Bradley entered court not admitting guilt, but pleading no contest to charges of murder and child endangerment in the death of her daughter.
Your Honor, we have gone over this numerous times with Ms. Bradley, and this is what she wants to do.
The coroner reported that Glenara Bates had been starved. The report also revealed that she had been beaten and bitten, with investigators finding 200 wounds on her body.
Fair to say that she had bruises literally from head to toe? Yeah, I think that's a fair statement.
Glenn Bates, Glenara's father, was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death in 2016. It has taken 2 years to reach this point in the mother's case.
Andrea Bradley did cause the death of Glenara Bates.
A debate focused on Bradley's competency took place. In the end, it was determined that while she was fit to stand trial, her IQ was too low for her to face the death penalty. Instead, she received a different sentence.
Andrea Bradley?
Yes.
And you accept this plea bargain? You understand the plea bargain and the charges?
Yes.
Andrea Bradley entered a no-contest plea to the charges, and Judge Robert Ruhlman found her guilty. She will face a prison term ranging from 23 years to life for a crime that already resulted in the victim's death. The judge did not impose a sentence, instead ordering a pre-sentencing report. A teenager who admitted to shooting a police officer at close range, nearly killing him, learned his fate. Emotions ran high in court as the officer described how he thought his life was ending after being shot. The judge expressed strong outrage, criticizing how Church's actions over a stolen car ruined his life and the officer's. Jerrion Church, who confessed to the shooting, will spend 20 years in prison. The sentencing came with harsh words from the judge. Church, who was 17 at the time, had fired multiple rounds at the officer after a traffic stop in March involving a stolen Kia Forte. The officer, who was shot in the arm and thigh, recounted in court how he feared for his life.
As I was falling to the ground, I felt darkness surrounding me. That moment felt extremely long, but I imagined it was death. Was this how my life was going to end? Am I ever going to see my wife and my son, who was 3 months old at the time?
A warrant was issued for Church's arrest, and a month later, U.S. Marshals located and took him into custody. Church pleaded guilty to the charges, including attempted aggravated murder, and spoke briefly in court.
I apologize for this happening to you, Mr. Barrett. I hope this never happens to you again.
But the judge did not mince words before sentencing him.
Even a child knows right from wrong. You ruined these lives. You ruined your own life over a Kia, over a car, a cheap car. You not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 times aimed and tried to kill that young man over a car. I will never understand what's going on in our community. But it's my job not only to try and figure that out, but more importantly to protect it, and that's what we're going to do here today.
Church was sentenced to 20 years in prison and will also lose his driver's license for life. Upon his release, he will be on parole for 5 months. The The two men convicted of killing 2 Westland teenagers were sentenced. The boys were found shot in a Detroit field. The 2 mothers gave their final statements to the men who murdered their sons.
Jacob was my only son. He was murdered when he was 18 years old. My son had been barely shaving. He was my only child. Not only did the defendant take away my son's future, he took away my future. My future as a mother, my future as a grandmother.
The 2 defendants have taken away so many milestones from him. He was 2 months shy of his 18th birthday, proving to his parents that he could graduate high school, drinking his first beer at the age of 21 with his brother at a bar to celebrate his birthday, finding the love of his life, his wedding day, seeing his first child born, and so many more.
Then came a jaw-dropper from convicted felon, 25-year-old Frederick Young, after he was sentenced to life in prison without parole.
I'd like to say sorry to the families of Ayanna Jones, Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, and I want to apologize to them for not being able to get justice for their loved ones who was murdered in cold blood. And in respect for the peaceful protest, I want to say hands up, don't shoot.
24-year-old Philando Hunter was also sentenced to life in prison.
Anything to say, sir?
Police say Young and Hunter robbed Jacob Cutler and Jordan Bavish, forced them to strip, and then shot them on a vacant lot on Detroit's east side in 2012. Their bodies were discovered 5 days later by scrappers. Investigators report that the Westland teens had met the men at a Detroit home to buy drugs.
I love you, Jordan Michael Bavish, to infinity and beyond. And I wish to carry the weight of your burdens on my shoulders so that you may rest in peace.
In the end, knowing who Jordan was, I believe he would want me to offer forgiveness. Although I know I may struggle with that endeavor for the rest of my life, it would be what Jordan would want. And know that as I read this today in the courtroom, Jordan was standing next to me. On behalf of Jordan and myself, I will pray for forgiveness for both of you.
The victims' families say that while they received some closure, their lives have been forever changed. Carl Hampton apologized to Eugene Warner's family before a Cuyahoga County judge sentenced him to 8 years in prison. Warner passed away from complications after Hampton unexpectedly punched him at a South Euclid bar in December 2013.
I know it's been a struggle for the Warner family, and it's been a struggle for my family. When me and Eugene got into it that night, I never intended that when I took a punch, that it would be the death of him. I never had that thought process in that mind. I'm sorry for what I did. I never intended for that punch to be a chain event to lead to his death. This burden, I'm gonna carry with my whole life about Eugene. I'm not that kind of person at all. I just hope that one day that y'all can forgive me. I know that the choices I made was wrong. If I can take them back, I would take them back and we would start over. Maybe we can be friends ourselves and be a whole different beginning. This was something else.
James Johnson was given 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole for the 2016 double murders at the Archer apartment building in downtown Cleveland. During the sentencing, Johnson cursed at Judge Kathleen Ann Satula, and afterward, his supporters clashed with the victims' families in the hallway.
Fuck you too, nigga.
Have a good day, too. We don't need y'all money. We pay up.
A Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court judge sentenced Anthony Simmons and Sierra Johnson to life in prison for a 2015 murder they maintain they didn't commit.
Part of being a man is some self-responsibility. I'm here to do that today, and that's it. Once again, I apologize for the family for bringing Timothy Nancy around. But I ain't killed Deshaun Hurd. When you think that, it's all right. and I will be back. That's all I gotta say. Respect.
I just want to say that my mother always told me that part of being an adult is to take responsibility for what you did, take responsibility for your actions. But no disrespect to you, Your Honor, no disrespect to the family. I just can't find myself taking responsibility for this one because I didn't do it.
A remorseful J. Kill Cleveland apologized to his mother and to the family of 43-year-old Frederick McIntosh, who was killed when Cleveland fired a single bullet during a robbery attempt in 2015. Cleveland was just a teen at the time of the shooting.
Brian Kraft, joined by Detective Tom Lynch from
Anjanette Bailey was sitting in the driver's seat of her vehicle, and next to her was Frederick McIntosh. This defendant, as well as his co-defendant, Jake Baylor, approached the car, held him up at gunpoint. Cleveland used his firearm and leaned over Anjanette Bailey and fired one time into the back of Frederick McIntosh, killing him on the scene, Your Honor.
He had 5 kids. He was killed on his young daughter's birthday. She just turned 5 years old. I don't want to forgive her. I'm not going to forgive her. And I wish you a bad life, and that's all I got to say.
From my heart, I sincerely do apologize for what happened to your loved one and what my son participated in. And my son, Your Honor, was not raised like this under no circumstances. You know, I just remember the little boy who always told me he had dreams of going to college, making his own business, taking care of his mother.
I want to take time off to apologize to the family. Say I'm sorry for what I did. I know it was wrong. Now I'm here to take my punishment for what I did. I want to apologize to my mom. Say I'm sorry for what I did. It was better than that. I'm sorry for breaking your heart.
The man who pleaded guilty earlier this week to killing a boy working at his family's sandwich shop in Cleveland Heights was sentenced to life in prison without parole on Friday.
Sonny has been hit in the head and is lying on the kitchen floor. His aunt comes to his aid. The defendant, knowing those events to have occurred, continues the course of the robbery, holds Mike Patel at point, demands that he open the cash register, and here you see him flee with the cash. He drops cash at the front door and leaves. Total elapsed time in the store is under 30 seconds.
I have a question for you, Davion Perry. Did you think about your selfish actions before pulling the trigger? Did you see his innocent face? Did you see how young he was? If you had stopped for 1 second and thought, I could still have my son. He dreamed to be a lawyer, engineer, or scientist. He definitely didn't invest his time thinking about killing or finding the easy way out in life like you did.
I just want to tell the family, Sonny Patel family, that I'm truly sorry for what I did. I know that my actions was wrong and I deserve to be punished for it. And I just hope that sooner or later down the line they can forgive me for it. And just tell my family I'm sorry as well. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Our next individual proved to be an even bigger monster by ending multiple lives.
Pain. You walk around in circles not knowing what to do with the grief. And Lynn's parents and siblings were going through similar grieving pain. I would like to know that in regard to the victim impact statement, it asks, has this incident in any way affected your lifestyle or the lifestyle of your family members? And I would say yes. Barry Caden killed my husband. Barry Caden affected my lifestyle as I had to sell off our home as I couldn't afford to stay there without my husband's income. My lifestyle as a grieving widow versus being married and enjoying our life as husband and wife. It was like starting over with a different life that I didn't choose to do. It was forced on me. Are there any other after effects of this incident which are experienced by me? Yes, The grieving of losing my husband at a young age, the PTSD from going through that horrible experience was like nothing I would wish on anyone. My lifestyle changed dramatically on a reduced income. Describe what being the victim of crime has meant to me. The loss and long-time grieving were the most difficult. The panic of having to sell off our home and lifestyle was gut-wrenching. Going through my husband's personal things and having to dispose of everything he worked so hard for was an experience I never thought I would have to go through at that time in our lives. His parents both lived to be a ripe old age of 97 years. They died like 3 years ago and maybe 6 years ago. Lynn should still be with me today living a fun life. Mr. Caden has no idea what I went through as he forced me into being a widow. My God, who does that to someone on purpose? All because of his greed. Just imagine losing your spouse, having to make decisions what to do with their body, planning a funeral. Then reality hits and you can no longer afford to stay in your home. You panic sell your worldly possessions as you must downsize your lifestyle so you can afford to live. Then you face it daily that your husband is no longer with you, and you sit on the couch and cry, tearing your heart out, crying. I can still remember that right now as I'm saying this. The pain, you walk around in circles not knowing what to do with the grief. And Lynn's parents and siblings were going through similar grieving pain. Were you psychologically injured as a result of this incident? Yes. I was in treatment a couple years. The depression, the nightmares from PTSD, the grieving. Was any property damaged or lost as a result of the incident? Yes, I lost my home and security. Have you incurred any other expenses or losses, including lost wages, as a result of this incident? Yes. Real estate expenses, lawyer fees, lost husband's income, lost my job as I had to move away. Do you want the offender to repay you for your financial losses as part of the sentence imposed by the sentencing judge? Per the settlement agreement, he can spend that time in jail reflecting on what he can do to compensate financially the victims of this terrible tragedy. I understand he still has a ton of money in his personal real estate. Perhaps he can find it in his heart to downsize his lifestyle and use the proceeds to finally compensate all of the victims, not just those that have died, but the ones that are still suffering to this day, for the loss of life that he inflicted on us innocent, grieving family members. Only then will he be able to live a life with less regret from all his bad choices he made while manufacturing illegally his drugs that eventually killed innocent victims. I do find it in my heart to forgive Barry Caden. I really do. I lost my spot. Okay, for my husband, Lynn LaPerriere. It is with forgiveness that I can go on with my life without carrying a burden of hate and revenge. That is not to say I do not forget the murder of my husband. That will always be in my heart as well. But I forgive you, Barry Caden, so your heart will somehow be less burdened with the guilt and pain you must carry for the rest of your life.
The judge quickly determined Barry's fate, ensuring that none of his wrongdoings went unpunished.
Your actions for 11 individuals. Your sentencing guidelines for 11 counts of involuntary manslaughter are 43 to 86 months, and a plea agreement to 10 to 15 years with credit for some time already served on your federal sentence. The sentencing agreement is a substantial departure upwards from those guidelines. The court finds this departure is warranted as you breach the public's trust by distributing these tainted medications that kill 11 members of our community. There were at least 2 other investigations of your facility in 2002 through 2003 and in 2006, in which your facility produced and distributed injectable medications that were contaminated. And in 2002, that resulted in several people being hospitalized with meningitis-like symptoms. It shows a pattern of conduct that you are aware of the potential devastating consequences for persons who administer the contaminated medications from your facility. Yet, even after prior investigations, you continue to encourage and direct your employees to create dangerous conditions at your facility. That makes the repeated violations of public trust that are now before the court for sentencing all the more egregious. There can be no doubt that you knew the risks that you're exposing innocent patients to, and you chose, even after being investigated and sanctioned, to place your bottom line over innocent lives. I've read all the victim impact statements. I've listened to the statements here in court today. You have altered the lives of these families and have robbed them from time with their loved ones. I am familiar with the facts and circumstances of this case. I find the following sentences in the best interest of justice and is reasonable and proportionate to the underlying offenses. It is a sentence of the court that you be sentenced to a term of 10 years to 15 years with credit from August 7, 2017 for 2,468 days on count 1, whereby pay crime victim assessment in the amount of $130, court costs $550, and $68 in state costs. Restitution is reserved, and the court will schedule a restitution hearing if necessary within 90 days. Regarding count 2, it's a sentence of the court that you be sentenced to a term of 10 to 15 years with credit from August 7, 2017 or 2,468 days. You are to pay $68 in state costs. Restitution is reserved, and the court will schedule a restitution hearing if necessary within 90 days. Regarding count 3, it's a sentence of the court that you be sentenced to a term of 10 to 15 years with credit from August 7, 2017 or 2,468 days. You are to pay $68 in state costs. Restitution is reserved, and the court will schedule a restitution hearing if necessary in 90 days. Regarding count 4, it's a sentence of the court that you be sentenced to a term of 10 to 15 years with credit from August 7, 2017 or 2,468 days. You are to pay $68 in state costs. Restitution is reserved, and the court will schedule a restitution hearing if necessary in 90 days. Regarding count 5, it's a sentence of the court that you be sentenced to a term of 10 to 15 years with credit from August 7, 2017 or 2,468 days. You are to pay $68 in state costs. Restitution is reserved, and the court will schedule a restitution hearing if necessary in 90 days. Regarding count 6, it's a sentence of the court that you be sentenced to a term of 10 to 15 years with credit from August 7, 2017 to 2,468 days. You are to pay $68 in state costs. Restitution is reserved, and the court will schedule a restitution hearing if necessary in 90 days. Regarding count 7, it's a sentence of the court that you be sentenced to a term of 10 to 15 years with credit from August 7, 2017 or 2,468 days. You are to pay $68 in state costs. Restitution is reserved. The court will schedule a restitution hearing if necessary in 90 days. Regarding count 8, it's a sentence of the court that you be sentenced to a term of 10 to 15 years with credit from August 7, 2017 or 2,468 days credit. You are to pay $68 in state costs. Restitution is reserved, and the court will schedule a restitution hearing if necessary in 90 days. Regarding count 9, it is a sentence of the court that you be sentenced to a term of 10 to 15 years with credit from August 7, 2017 or 2,468 days credit. You are to pay $68 in state costs. Restitution is reserved, and the court will schedule a restitution hearing if necessary in 90 days. Regarding count 10, it's a sentence of the court that you be sentenced to a term of 10 to 15 years with credit from August 7, 2017 or 2,468 days. You are to pay $68 in state costs. Restitution is reserved, and the court will schedule a restitution hearing if necessary. Regarding count 11, it's a sentence of the court that you be sentenced to a term of 10 to 15 years with credit from August 7, 2017 for 2,468 days. We were to pay $68 in state costs. Restitution is also reserved, and the court will schedule a restitution hearing if necessary in 90 days. These sentences, in counts 1 through 11, shall be concurrent with each other and concurrent with the federal prison term. Per the plea agreement, the defendant shall be returned to the Federal Bureau of Prisons to complete his federal sentence and shall serve the sentence in this case in the Bureau of Prisons. The Michigan Department of Corrections shall include the federal sentence when calculating the earliest release date. Mr. Caddy, you'll be providing an appellate rights form. You are entitled to file an application for relief from today's decision. The form explains important rights regarding appeal. The court will appoint a lawyer for your appeal if you are financially unable to afford one. If you want a court-appointed attorney, you must make your request in writing within 42 days from today's date.
To help the judge determine the suspect's fate, the prosecution presents the jury with evidence of the suspect's actions.
My name's Armando Jr. Hernandez, and I'm going to be of Westgate 2020. Absolutely right.
As I said in the state's sentencing recommendation, as the court's aware, this was not the defendant just walking up and deciding to take action, deciding to direct violence at individuals at Westgate. He wanted the world to know.
Oh, my name's Armando Jr. Hernandez, and I'm going to be the of Westgate 2020. So this is to get back to me. Also, I am tuning up Westgate. Let's get this done, guys. This is society's bullshit.
I wouldn't do that.
Yes, this is.
I wouldn't do that.
This is all society's bullshit.
You ain't got me, dude.
I share with that with the court because that was the defendant's own feed. That was what he was filming. That's what he wanted the world to see that day. There was someone on top of the parking garage who was filmed, and you can also hear what was going on at this time.
Oh my God. Where's that? People are running. This man is shooting so much down here. Let's see what's happening.
This is a photo, Judge, from, as you see the window shot out, this is one of the restaurants in the Westgate area that day. Samantha's mom talked to the court, but I think it's important the court understand who Samantha was before this day. Gives you an idea, she was an artist, she enjoyed living life. She worked at Westgate. That was a safe place for her. Her mom addressed the court, but I think it's important the court see and read what she felt in looking at the defendant as he had his AR-15 trained on her.
Society's bullshit.
Just a couple of things, Judge, and this is going to be a recurring theme as I talk a little bit about what not just the victims, but many of the folks who were just there that day had a gun pointed at them, had to run for their lives. And you'll see again and again, they don't feel safe. How it impacts relationships. How they've changed their personality. Nightmares, flashbacks. Folks who were outgoing become introverted. You'll see that again and again and again. Alfredo came in this morning, Judge. He didn't want to address the court, as is his right. But the information before the court is that Alfredo almost died that day, but for some good Samaritans who happened to be able to be there to provide some care. He should have died. He was in ICU for an extended period of time. I went out to Glendale that night. Most of those officers, emergency personnel, believed that he was going to die based on the nature of his wounds. This is actually a statement from the Randy, the husband of the nurse, who encountered Alfredo as he lay in a pool of blood, not moving. Incredibly fortunate to still be with us today. Destiny's mom obviously expressed much of the pain that she has felt. Numerous surgeries. You saw those horrific pictures, and you heard the impact, Your Honor. But as a couple of the folks who've already spoken told the court, this is not limited to the three folks who were shot. This is not limited to the folks who had pointed on them. There were hundreds of people who ran for their lives. And those people had families. And it has, as you'll see in some of the comments, it has butterflied to hundreds and hundreds of people how this event caused by the defendant had such a profound effect. Individual by the name of Juan Baldonado remembers the offense. He wanted to do more. You'll hear that. A number of people were there. People who carried guns but didn't have a gun that day. The feeling of guilt for not stopping Armando Hernandez. Folks who now, a number of folks,
with credit for 779 days time served. As to count 2, it's ordered sentencing the defendant to the maximum term of 17 years from the Department of Corrections beginning today's date with 0 days time served. Sentencing the defendant to 17 years in the Department of Corrections with no time served. As to count 5, it's ordered sentencing the defendant to the maximum term, less than maximum term of 10 years with 0 time served. Community supervision is imposed as to counts 1, 2, and 5. As to counts 1, 2, and 5. And the court's going to retain jurisdiction over restitution for a period of 15 years in those 3 counts and indicate that if a hearing is set, that the defendant waives his presence at that hearing. It's further ordered that counts 1, 2, and 5, the terms in the Department of Corrections be served consecutively with one another. As to count 6, it's ordered suspending the imposition of sentence and placing the defendant on supervised probation for a period of 7 years upon his absolute discharge from the Department of Corrections. The standard terms and conditions of probation apply. The financial assessments associated with this case are as follows. There's a monthly probation fee of $65, a time payment fee of $20, a probation assessment of $20, a criminal penalty assessment of $13, a victim rights enforcement assessment of $2, and a victim rights compensation fund assessment of $9. The beginning dates for those fines, fees, and assessments will be determined at a later date. As to all counts, it's ordered that the defendant will have no contact with the victims whatsoever and shall not return to the scene of the crime. and shall pay restitution for all economic loss to all victims. It's further ordered that the defendant will forfeit any interest in any weapons, ammunition, and weapon accessories and currency seized in connection with this case. In this case, it's ordered dismissing counts 3, 4, and counts 7 through 39. And it's ordered that the defendant must submit to DNA testing for law enforcement identification purposes. Ladies and gentlemen, I impose the maximum sentences allowed under the plea, which equates to 44 years in the Department of Corrections, followed by 7 years of supervised probation. Mr. Hernandez, I don't think you can comprehend the amount of damage you've done to the victims in this case, their families, and the ripple effect your actions have had just because you're trying to gain respect. Unfortunately, we see acts like this happening more and more. We see people with mental health issues, opinions, and trying to convey some type of message to innocent victims in society. That's not okay. And this anything from the state?
No, Your
Anything from the House?
No, Your
Sir, you have the right to petition this court for post-conviction relief and to have a lawyer represent you. If you can't afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you. If you can't afford the copies of the necessary records and transcripts, they'll be provided to you at no cost. If you want to file that petition for post-conviction relief, you have to file notice within 90 days of today's date, or you lose that right. Also, after completing this sentence, you have the right to ask the court to set aside the judgment of conviction in this matter, except as provided by statute. You also have the right to ask the court to restore the rights that will be impacted by the sentence imposed in this case. I'll need you to step over to my bailiff, sign for a copy of your post-conviction relief rights, your terms and conditions of probation, and provide the court a fingerprint. I want to thank everyone for coming today. I know this is very emotional on all sides. I hope that at some point everyone can move on and gain some type of closure, get counseling if you need it, on both sides. There are no winners here. Thank you.
Aaron Von Ellinger is the central figure in this case. In 2021, in Ada County, Aaron Von Ellinger was accused of committing a serious crime. Once the police concluded that he was the perpetrator, they decided to file charges against him. The prosecutor has to present every detail of the suspect's actions, and this case was no exception.
This case is about power. Power wielded in the wrong hands. On March 9th of 2021, the defendant, Aaron Von Ellinger, wielded that power against a 19-year-old intern and overcame her resistance. And he forced her to allow his inside of her mouth, and he forced his finger inside of her. Now, during the course of this trial, you will learn that in February of 2021, JV was just 19 years old, and she was living out or working towards her career aspirations. And she was working as an intern at the Idaho State Capitol, helping representatives with various tasks. At that same time, the defendant was at the Capitol in his capacity as a state representative. And it's there at that Capitol where he met JV and he began to interact and seek her out. You will learn that during one of these interactions, he gave this 19-year-old intern his state representative card that had his cell phone number handwritten on the back. And during these interactions, you will learn that the defendant, who was 38 years old at the time, asked this 19-year-old intern out on a date. And that date was set for March 9th. And on March 9th, the defendant picked up JV a block away from the state capitol and drove her to Barbacoa, where the two had dinner. The defendant then took JV back to his apartment where he was staying while the session was going. This is where the rape and forcible penetration took place. You will learn that JV tried to resist, that she tried to make excuses. You will learn that she said she wasn't on birth control, that she hadn't shaved, that she wasn't ready, that they could get in trouble, that she didn't want to, that he was hurting her, and she told him no. He didn't stop, and he didn't listen to JV. Instead, he inserted his finger inside of her without her consent. Despite her objections, despite her resistance, you will learn that the defendant got on top of JV, and he straddled her with his knees, pinning her arms down. And from this position of power and control, he forced his inside of her mouth. Now you will learn that JV actually sustained injuries to her head from where the defendant was pulling her hair and forcing her head into the headboard. You'll learn he eventually took his out of her mouth, but then from this position of power and control, he began to manually stimulate himself until he on her stomach. Now JV didn't report this rape and assault until March 11th, when she next had to return to the state capitol and face the man that had just raped her. Now you'll learn and hear from JV's mother, Cherie Davis, and she'll talk to you about an early morning phone call she got on March 11th. She'll talk to you about how this was an unusual time for her to be receiving a phone call from JV, and she will describe JV's demeanor and tone during that phone call. And you'll learn that when JV went to the state capitol on March 11th, she immediately informed the Assistant Sergeant of Arms, Kimberly Blackburn. And you'll hear from Ms. Blackburn. And she will talk to you about that interaction she had with JV that morning. She will talk to you about her appearance, her demeanor, her tone, her emotional state. And you'll learn that this was reported to the Boise Police Department, and detectives Monty Iverson and Brandon Joseph were assigned. They responded to the state capitol and met with JV, and eventually escorted her to Faces of Hope in downtown Boise. You'll learn that it was there that a examination was done, and swabs were taken from various locations on JV's body, including her stomach, where the defendant had ejaculated. Now, these swabs were then sent to the Idaho State Police Forensics Lab for testing and comparison to a sample that was collected from the defendant by Detective Joseph.
It is the defense's responsibility to convince the judge of the suspect's innocence. The defense took the same stance in this instance.
He's a 38-year-old former member of the House of Representatives. He grew up in Idaho, spent some time in Montana, actually graduated from high school in Whitefish, Montana, and joined the Army out of high school at 18 years old. He was part of the Army Ranger unit. He served in Afghanistan in 2001. Upon his return after his military service, he lived in Arizona for a while, ultimately returned to Idaho, and in 2001, he was appointed by the governor to the Idaho House of Representatives. He began that term, his first term, in early January, when all members of the House came to Boise to serve. And he was on a couple of different committees. And you'll hear evidence that there are interns, there are volunteers, there are people that are doing things for credit, and that there's a lot of people that are running in and out of the Capitol during the legislative session. You will hear evidence that Aaron met JV in Representative Christensen's office. That was the first meeting. You will not hear evidence that he sought her out. He was in Representative Christensen's office, and JV, who was working for Representative Christensen, came in and they were introduced. There was the small talk back and forth, seeing each other in the Capitol, and Aaron did provide JV with a business card with his phone number on it. provided that number to her, said if she ever had any questions or if she ever needed anything, he could give her a call. He never asked her for her phone number. He never said, can I get your number? He just gave her his card with his personal number on the back. And they met in the middle of January. And again, they just had small talk back and forth. And then on February 7th, that was a Sunday, you'll hear evidence that Mr. Aaron Von Ellinger received a phone call from a number that he did not know. It was about 4:30 in the afternoon on a Sunday, or actually he received a text. And he responded to the text saying, who is this? And it was JV. JV had sent him a text, said she was putting new numbers in her phone and she just wanted to make sure that this was him. And they had a short text conversation. You won't hear any evidence of any attempts to influence, coerce, or even do anything which would appear to create some sort of attempt to create a relationship. Now, they continued to communicate with each other in the State House, seeing each other periodically, just passing by. But you will not hear any evidence of any efforts by Aaron to pursue some relationship with JV. You will hear evidence that around March 2nd, remember that first contact was February 7th. On March 2nd, again, you'll hear evidence that JV reached out to Aaron and just asked what he was up to. She wanted to bug. Okay? And she said that she was leaving the State House, and she just wanted to know what he was doing. And he said, hey, I need some fresh air. And he went out and he met with him, and they talked. They conversed. Again, they had been conversing casually, friendly in the State House, but this was the first time that they had met outside of the Capitol, other than having text message contact with each other. And Aaron asked JV out on a date, asked if she wanted to go to dinner, and she agreed. She said that she could. She said it would have to be on a date where she was at the Capitol. You'll learn that
The state's going to object to hearsay within his opening statement.
This is a recitation of what the defense intends to prove.
We haven't stated that, Your Honor. I'll just recite it.
the evidence will show.
Go ahead.
Thank you. She agreed. She indicated that it would have to happen on Tuesday and Thursday because you'll likely hear evidence that JV worked on Tuesdays and Thursdays, days that she was volunteering in the Capitol. And I'm going to step back just a second. You're not going to hear any evidence that JV worked for Aaron, that she was involved in any of his committees at all, that he had anything to do with the control or what she did. There wasn't any sort of a work relationship where she had to do what he asked her. They just knew each other, met each other in the State House.
Every person must eventually face the consequences of their actions.
It is unclear to me, given the relatively unique circumstances and relationships in this case, whether or not general deterrence can realistically be achieved. It is clear to me, however, that an appropriate sentence will specifically deter you, at least through the period of incarceration. Well, I can't come to the conclusion that you are a multiple offender. You clearly have a criminal record. In considering all the factors informing my decision, recognizing my obligation to make a discretionary decision based on reason, I concluded that the appropriate sentence in this case is a unified term of 20 years, consisting of a minimum term of confinement of 8 years fixed, followed by an indeterminate period of 12 years. I won't impose a fine. I will order that you pay court costs and a civil penalty in the amount of $5,000 in favor of the victim in this case. Additionally, I'm going to order that you pay restitution in the amount of $2,015.39 and require that once released from incarceration that you comply with the requirements to register as a sex offender as set forth in Title 18, Chapter 3 of the Code. At this time, you are remanded to the custody of the sheriff to be delivered to the Department of Corrections for execution of sentence. There is no bail to exonerate. You'll be given credit for 139 days served prior to the entry of this judgment. That is the court's judgment. Mr. Van Elder, you have the right to appeal this judgment. 42 days from which to take the appeal from the date the judgment is made and entered. You have the right to be represented by an attorney in pursuing that appeal. If you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed for the public expense, and also the payment of costs will be public expense.
Big thanks to our viewers for joining the courtroom journey with us. Your interest in the stories of justice is what keeps our channel alive.